Hey, what's good YouTube? Back with another video, and today I'll be continuing my storytime series. Now, I know you might know that I'm recording in my car, but last video I made, I got interrupted multiple times, and yes, it was a 20-minute video, but this is going to be a shorter video, and I don't want it to take forever to make. So I figured I'd just record it out here where I wouldn't get interrupted. And I can't record it outside right now because it's fucking Camino outside with all the rain that's been going on. Been getting a lot of rain here recently in North Carolina. So I figured I'd just record it from my car where it's nice and quiet. So today's video will be a bit less story time as it will really be rant. You see, in my last video, you might remember how I mentioned that I went to a Christian school, and we went to a Christian school, so usually that would mean that on Wednesdays we would have chapel. We would go to chapel, they would have songs, and then they would also have a main sermon that usually the principal would preach because he was also a pastor. But also they would have guest speakers there too, and I'm gonna get to those later, but the reason why we'd have them on Wednesdays is because we had half days on Wednesdays, and there was a certain length that the classes had to be on a half day, because on other days we'd have bounce backs where we go back to classes, except for classes that we would be having on Wednesday. But that's really besides the point. You see, but I never really enjoyed going to chapel. It's not because I'm an atheist or anything like that. I'm not an atheist. Don't come at me for that. But the feel of chapel, it never really felt right. Like they had the temperature always turned up really high to where all you want to do really is just fall asleep. And then they would be singing on stage, and I gotta say something. Some of the singers on there, they were awful. They were awful. I mean, there were some people there with some talent, I guess, but for the most part, a lot of the people singing on stage, they were not good singers at all. Like, I think that I could just volunteer my little sister to go up there, and then she would do a better job screeching on there like a banshee. So yeah, that really didn't help. They were always off key, and they were never in sync with each other or the music that was playing for any of the songs that they were singing. So we never really felt that feel, I guess, the feel of community that I guess the chapel was supposed to provide. I'm assuming that's why we held the chapel. But I mean, I could go on for a while about the singers. I mean, a lot of people agreed with me. So, yeah, 0 out of 10, wouldn't recommend. Now, another thing that would happen is after the principal would come out and just yell at us like for stuff we were doing in school. Like, obviously, since it's a private school, we have a dress code, but students were not the best at following it. I feel like the principal, he did put a lot of emphasis on it, but for whatever reason, like the way he went out enforcing the rules, no one liked it. So every day, every time we had chapel, he'd go up to give us some reminders, and he'd be like, okay, dress code. Dress code is not a suggestion. And also he'd be reminding us about stuff with school and academically. I'm like, we could just have conversations with our teachers about this. Like, if they see a problem, they could pull us aside. You don't have to yell at us as a group. And that's typically what he would do. He would yell at us as a group entirely. I mean, I did not understand it at all. I didn't understand why he caught such a temper. And I don't understand why he thought that yelling would do anything to help whenever he'd been doing it the entire year and had done nothing to help. But to end this off, I'm going to talk about some of the things that happened freshman year. Obviously, we had a different principal freshman year. And with chapel, I mean, nothing ever felt right freshman year. Like, obviously, freshman year, same year as COVID, 2020. So, you see, what we would do is we would go there, and you see, we had to wear our masks in chapel because it was the same year as COVID. So we have our masks on, but we also had to be 2 seats apart, which really didn't make sense since we already had masks on. I'm like, if we're already 2 seats apart, why do we even need to have masks on? I mean, look, I took COVID seriously. I'm not one of those people who denied it, but I don't really see what the mask is doing if you're already 2 seats apart from whoever's sitting next to you. So, and most of the chapel, the principal then, he would be walking around making sure everyone had their masks on and whatnot. It was kind of annoying, but he was just doing what he was supposed to do, so I'm not going to fault him for that. But at the end of the day, it didn't really feel like, it just felt like we were just trying to get it over with that year. But to end off, the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is going to be the guest speakers. And oh my lord, I could talk about them all day. Now, for starters, this one was from freshman year. Typically, like, there was one guy who came, I think he was from another state, I'm assuming, yeah, he was from Florida. And he came and he had a real problem with stuttering and voice cracks and all that stuff. And no one could take him seriously. No one got any point of his message. Like, the main thing I remember was one thing he kept saying over and over again. Like, he was talking about his story about how he was as a kid, and he was like, man, I used to hate church. And we were just all laughing at him. And I feel really sorry for the guy because I feel like he couldn't control a lot of it. But to this day, we still find it funny and we still joke about it. But that was really only the tip of the iceberg of what was to come the next year. Now, the next year we had this one guy. I think he was a youth pastor who was friends with the principal. But he came in wearing this bright neon hoodie, and no one took him seriously from there, but it got a lot worse. Like, during his sermon, he was talking about girls and whatnot. He was like, man, you gotta make sure to hang around those Christian shawties. And we're just gobsmacked that he would even think that would get across to us. We just all found him as cringe, annoying, and overall, no one liked him at all, and we didn't want him back. And he also was like, hallelujah, if I could even say that. And he was mostly screaming the entire time. And we just thought it was annoying. We didn't like it at all. So we were just hoping that we would get someone else who didn't act like a crazy 13-year-old with ADHD. But later he would return to speak, and the first thing he does when he goes on stage is he says, okay, everybody, so last time I preached, I used a word that made some of you feel uncomfortable, so again, I'm not going to say the word shoddy anymore. And we're just confused because by then I think most people had forgotten about it. They probably remember him being weird or whatever, but they probably don't remember the specific word he used. And they just, honestly, even if they did, they were probably just hoping he wouldn't bring it back up. And then later on, like, we weren't listening. You'd be like, hey, everybody, listen or else I'm going to say shoddy over and over again. And that was basically the end of that guy. There was one other time he came up to introduce the guy who was preaching. I don't know why they had him to introduce, but we thought he was preaching, and everyone's just like, was like, oh no. But yeah, that was the end of that guy. I don't really remember anything else that happened in chapel. Overall, these are my thoughts on it, and yeah, that's it isn't really one of the reasons why I left the school, but I certainly don't miss it. But anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope y'all enjoyed, but as of right now, I'm out, y'all. Peace.